You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
One thing actually also was an interesting and nice realization for myself over the pandemic was I didn't show for like 4 months, and how much I still loved riding and being at the barn and like riding out in the field and riding in the ring and all of it, even when there wasn't a competition to be getting ready for. And that it was nice to know that like how much joy and purpose this still brought for me, even when we had this kind of unexpected break from competition.
Welcome to the Practical Horseman podcast, featuring conversations with respected riders, industry leaders, and horse care experts. The show is co-hosted by Practical Horseman editors, and our goal is to inform, educate, and inspire. I'm Kathleen Landwehr, and this week's episode is with international show jumper Katie Dinan. Katie and I spoke in mid-July after she represented the U.S. jumping team at CSIO Aachen in Germany. Aachen served as one of Katie's observation events as a rider named to the U.S. jumping team shortlist for the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. To give you a little more background on Katie, she has collected numerous top placings as well as represented the U.S. on several Nations Cup teams. She made her senior Nations Cup team debut in 2013 and helped the U.S. earn a Nations Cup win at CSIO5 Dublin in 2014. Katie has competed in 5 Longines FEI Jumping World Cup finals. Last fall, she won the Longines FEI Jumping World Cup CSI 5-W at the Washington International Horse Show with Brego R'N B. Katie is based out of her family's farm in North Salem, New York, as well as Wellington, Florida. In our discussion, Katie talks about what she enjoys about show jumping, how she handles big competitions, and shares about her string of horses. Before getting into the conversation with Katie, I'd like to share a word from this episode's sponsor, Purina. Purina Animal Nutrition has 3 research-backed ration balancers to fill nutritional gaps in your horse's diet. Enrich Plus delivers a concentrated source of protein, vitamins, and minerals without unnecessary calories. Enrich Plus Senior features Active-Age prebiotic technology and Outlast supplement for aging easy keepers. Omega Match is rich in omega-3 fatty acids and vitamin E, great for horses without access to green grass. Find a ration balancer for your horse at purinamills.com/ration balancers or visit your local feed store. Also, follow Purina on Instagram at Purina Feed Greatness and on Facebook at Purina Horse. Now, let's jump right into the conversation with Katie, where she begins by talking about how she got her start with horses.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you. So I started riding horses when I was 4 years old. My mom, who started riding as an adult, brought me to the barn on Mother's Day as a Mother's Day gift to herself, which shows what kind of mom she is. And that's when I started. I had my first pony lesson at Arcadia Farm in New York. And it was both the beginning of a lifelong, I hope, passion of mine, and also a lifelong bond between my mom and me over horses and riding together. So that's how I started. I'm not from kind of a horsey family, so to say. No one in my family had ridden in any way other than kind of at that point at a much kind of smaller scale. My mom did some competitions. She actually did a little bit of eventing and then did like adult hunter type showing, but no one really knew there was like a whole world of jumpers around the world. And so it was an adventure, I think, for all of us. And as in many cases, kind of way led on to way. And here we are now.
Awesome. Yeah, it's really neat that, you have that special bond with your mom and this joint passion.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah. So, since you were involved with jumping, what is it about that discipline that kind of drew you to it versus a different discipline?
Sure. Well, I think jumping is my favorite part of riding. And actually still remember the first time I ever got to jump. I must have been like 6. So I'd been riding for 2 years and I really, really wanted to jump. And my first jump was a cross rail. And I kept on jumping the side of the cross rail so it would be bigger. And they were like, you have to jump the middle of the jump, but I wanted to jump a bigger jump. So then I was told I wasn't allowed to jump bigger jumps until I learned how to start jumping in the middle of the jump. So I was always excited to jump more and jump bigger. And I always thought that that feeling was just so thrilling that you were doing something like so athletic, and in such tandem with your horse that always just like I thought was so fun and exciting. And then of course, like as I progressed, I think like jumping courses and like at competition level, there's so much strategy and you can be very analytical about it, and I really like that. um, in terms of other disciplines, I would say that flat work was neither my forte nor my favorite thing to do. But over the years, I've grown more and more to appreciate it, not just for what it does for us training in jumping, but also really as an end to itself and like being able to feel really excited and appreciative and proud if I feel like I've worked through something on the flat. And that's something that I had to learn because it wasn't naturally something I think was so passionate about. Otherwise, I actually really love cross country riding, and I love riding outside, and especially during the pandemic when we weren't competing as much. I'm based up in North Salem, New York, where we're lucky to have a lot of open land up there with a lot of jumps. And I actually took out my show jumpers and I jumped a lot of the natural obstacles, and I had a blast doing that. So I would say if I could do a different discipline, it would be probably 3-day eventing, but I would need a lot of dressage lessons to get to that point. So for now, I'll definitely stick to the jumping.
Very cool. Yeah, it's nice to kind of cross train from time to time. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, for sure.
And what do you think it is about horses and the sport that have kind of kept you involved with it for so long?
So I would say that it's first and foremost the horses. That I'm an overgrown pony kid, but overgrown in the sense of age, not even height. I probably could still fit on a pony. Um, and I've always loved animals, and I really, really love the horses. And that I think is what keeps me doing it, even when it makes life more complicated, even as like I've grown up and gone through different life stages. And also like as in a sport where like, when things don't go your way and when you have frustrating moments, like coming back uh, to that love of the horse, I would say. In addition to that, like the riding itself. um, as I said, I love jumping and I love jumping courses, and I love like that riding element. And I think one thing actually I also was an interesting and nice realization for myself over the pandemic was I didn't show for like 4 months, and how much I still loved riding and being at the barn and like riding out in the field and riding in the ring and all of it, even when there wasn't a competition to be getting ready for. And that it was nice to know that like how much joy and purpose this still brought for me, even when we had this kind of unexpected break from competition. But I also love competing. I think that competing for me pushes me to be the best version of myself in every way, not just with the riding itself, but it gives me a lot of discipline in my life, like making sure I get enough sleep and like I'm in the right fitness program, that I eat well, that I'm really on my A game. And that's something that I think is a really good thing. I also think what's exciting about competing is that it adds this kind of dynamic element in your life where it's not like you're just going through the motions of life and you kind of know when you wake up what's going to happen at by the whole day and what's going to happen before you go to sleep. There's like always this really exciting thing. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. And I think that's a really exciting way to live life, that there's an element of the unexpected and you prepare and you have goals and that you kind of keep going after these things.
Definitely. Yeah, that's so true of the sport for sure, with working with horses.
Especially working with horses. Yeah.
So could you talk about some of the most influential horses in your life, who they are and what they're like and why they were
Sure. I could go
influential?
on all day about this. Usually it's not socially appropriate to just talk about how much you love your horses. So thank you. So the first horse I would mention was my junior hunter, um, Angelo. And that was half my life ago. I was 15. And Angelo was a spectacularly talented horse. I was in complete awe of him. He was the hack winner. He was an amazing jumper. He was beautiful. And I had been successful in the ponies and in my early horse career, but I had never won, like, I'd never been champion at something like Devon or indoors. And for all of those listeners who have grown up in the US, those are like big goals for a junior rider in America. And for me, Angelo, like, he rose to the occasion and taught me how to be a winner. And I accomplished so many of those goals with him. So I would say he gave me a lot of confidence as not just a rider, but as a very awkward teenager. He really made me feel good about myself, and he taught me how to win and to ride under pressure. And I think that sometimes it's the horses early in our career that can be so formative like that. So I'm very grateful to him. He sadly died in the prime of his career. He had some complications following college surgery. So um, that was really hard, but he is actually, he's buried at our farm, and we have a little shrine to him in our office. So even though we have only jumpers now, we have like all these hunter photos. Um, and yeah, I'm very grateful for him, for the confidence that he gave me, and um, in life and riding. Um, the next horse I would say was a jumper named Vancouver. He was the first horse I jumped big Grand Prix on. He won the Young Rider Championship, and we jumped our first 5-star Grand Prix together. He was like the bravest horse ever. He'd actually did his background was doing 3-day eventing in New Zealand, which really showed in his. He then moved to show jumping in New Zealand, but then came over here as a show jumper. But that really showed in his demeanor. Like, there was nothing this horse wouldn't do. And if Angelo gave me the confidence and belief in myself to be like a winner, Vancouver taught me how to jump big, and that I could jump big jumps, and that he just was such a great teacher at that level to start there. He is now retired at my friend Stephanie Donhockle's family. They have a ranch in California. So he lives there, and I've gone to visit him, and it's great to see him looking so good. He runs a little herd now. Um, and so I would say that so I had Angelo, this horse that gave me so much confidence as a competitor in Vancouver, who taught me how to jump big jumps, and then that all came together and really the horse that kind of changed my life, which was Nugatu Ballet. We call Nunu, and uh, Nunu I could literally talk about for hours. He was just the best thing ever. I got him when I was in high school. I was 17, and at that point he was 10, and he had just done a few meter 50 classes as a 10-year-old. So when we got him, often in jumping, and especially now, most horses have kind of, by and large, jumped the height they're going to end up jumping by end of 9 or 10. And though it does take some horses longer for whatever reason to develop, depending on where they are, who's and everything. But we had no expectations that Nunu would be some big Grand Prix horse. It was more like a meter 50 horse, or a really competitive horse for the young rider type level in the U.S. And he ended up being everything and more. We won the first Grand Prix we ever jumped together, which was at WEF. And no one was more shocked than I was, I think, in that moment. But then he just kept on going. He kept on getting better and better, and we ended up doing the World Cup final together, and jumping clear rounds in Gothenburg and Lyon, in those two World Cup finals. And he jumped a ton of Nations Cups and won a bunch of Grand Prix. And he ended up having an injury towards the end of his career that he came back from and had some other wonderful moments. But the last few years were kind of on and off. But I mean, overall, he was definitely the horse that put me on the map and changed the trajectory of my life and my definitely my riding career, but also my life, because I was introduced to a whole new level of the sport. Um, he now is 24, and he lives in my parents' front yard, and is a totally rambunctious 24 going on 3-year-old. He bucks around all day long and annoys the 3 other horses he's turned out with, and has so much personality. It's completely out of control. But it brings me a huge amount of joy that I can still spend so much time with him, and that our relationship has kind of uh, progressed from this very serious competitor partnership to now he's literally a pet. So he's only about 16 hands and really looks like a pony. So I think that adds to his pet-like nature. And the next horse I would say is Brego. After Nunu, I had to kind of rebuild a bit my group of horses, and Brego was the first horse after that who kind of got me back, like on the competing on Nations Cups for the U.S. and going back to the World Cup final and big events like that. And um, Brego was so different than Nuno. He was tall, Nuno was small, and when the riding was very different, but at the end of the day, and for whatever attitude, Nuno had kind of a spunky attitude, and Brego is such a gentleman. He was showed up at work every day on time, wanting to do his job at 100% capacity. He was just so good and tried so hard, and never ever ever would do anything wrong. And he went in a very specific style. His head was always very high up, and he was very upright, and he kind of a flat canter, and he just kind of went the way he went. But he gave me a tremendous amount of confidence. And another really cool thing I thought was I got him when he was 13, and I was hoping that we would have a few nice years, and I would have a horse to jump in some bigger classes for a little bit before I had some younger horses that were coming up. And he ended up, I just retired him about a month ago as an 18-year-old, and his two best years of his career were by far his 16 and 17 year. And I think for anyone with an older horse, that should be, I hope, something really positive, because his as a 16-year-old, he jumped the World Cup finals, he jumped the Nations Cup in Dublin, he felt amazing. And then I thought, okay, I can be grateful for this year. And then he came back the next year and he won 3 Grand Prix and never jumped better. And so that I think was a testament to his heart, and that he just wanted to do it so much. So he and Nunu and another great horse I had, Doggy Douglas, are now turned out together, and they're all geldings, and they all live here at my family's farm. And that's been something that being able to retire them like that has made me really happy. And then I think, so this is also looking a bit forward. I'm very excited about the new mare I have out of the blue, CF. She is the first mare I've really had at this level. And I hope is at the start of her career. She's a 10-year-old and has, Nunu had to really fight for everything. He was so small and so pony-like. And Brego just kind of he also in a way was a fighter, but Bridie just has sheer power. She is so athletic. And for me, it's been an amazing experience to be riding her and learning about her and figuring her out, because she has um, so much power and such a great attitude, and doesn't make things more complicated than they are. So those are all really, really good qualities. So I've been uh, I've been super grateful. I am super grateful, and I've been super lucky because I have had some really spectacular horses, and I think those, when I look back on my life, it's like each kind of moment or era was like defined by which horse was the big horse of that moment. So there were like the Angelo days, the New days, the Brego days, and it's amazing how much these horses can transform our lives.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's great that you've had some really, important horses to you, and they've had some great results with them, and grown, your career's developed with them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's also very special when you can like grow together, and um, sometimes you have like high expectations, and when you can meet those, it's an amazing feeling. And other times you actually have no expectations, and then things end up going in a totally different direction, and that can also be like a really special thing. So that's the thing with horses, is that you never know really which horse, like I wouldn't say that when I got any of these horses, especially Vancouver, Nunu, and Brego, I wouldn't have said when I got them like, oh, this is going to be the horse that changes my life. And it's often, for me, has been the case that like horses that I did weren't as expected or to be like a superstar kind of rose to that occasion.
Yeah, very cool, for sure. And I believe you recently went to CHIO Aachen in Germany, which is one of, I believe, the world's biggest horse shows. And can you talk a bit about that experience?
Sure. So I came back from Aachen last week. I think I'm still adjusting to reality after that. The competition was just absolutely amazing. I had been there once to watch uh, in 2011, so like 13 years ago. So I knew a little bit what to expect because I had, been a spectator. But the feeling of competing there was just phenomenal. I think that the show, I mean, was amazing, and the fact that there was such a crowd, not just a crowd that was so big. I think it was like 40,000 people for uh, the Nations Cup and the Grand Prix, and like most of the other events, it also felt pretty full. So this feeling that you were really like part of a sport that had such um, a a presence and was so popular like with the people, but also the crowd was so educated, and you could really even tell when they were watching, like they really knew, they were so many horse people, and they knew what was going on, and it made you feel really good to be doing the sport. I think another thing that was so special was the arena itself. It's amazing grass arena with like these spectacular jumps. The footing was spectacular, and it's getting harder and harder for horse shows to keep up grass arenas for a lot of very valid reasons. So we get to compete on grass and big grass fields less and less, and it was a reminder of how amazing like the best grass fields can be, and like the stride the horses were on and the way they took off and like felt off the ground, and like for the right horse how they can really grow in scope in that arena was an amazing feeling. So I definitely had a few pinch me moments, and trying to like just like relish the moment and appreciate being in a venue like that and competing, with the best in the world with and seeing so many great horses. And I was really proud of how my horses rose to the occasion.
Awesome. Yeah, it seems like a special venue from what I have heard, and yeah, great to have some strong performances there with your horses. And I mean that kind of leads into my next question in terms of thinking of some memorable moments, maybe some of your most important wins or your favorite wins that you've had, and what are some of those?
Sure. So I think when I think of memorable moments, I always think very like horse specific. And I've had a few really special horses in my career. I would say most recently, kind of my most memorable win recently was the World Cup out qualifier at Washington with my horse Brego, and that was last October. And that was really special because Brego was a horse I had had for um, about 5 years, and he was 17 at that point. And he is an amazing horse who he had so much uh, like physical ability and was just such a great jumper, but also had such a great attitude that he like always gave 100%. And in the course of our time together, we had several podium finishes in 4 and 5 star Grand Prix. He'd won a few 3 star Grand Prix, but we hadn't had like a big win like that. And I felt so strongly that he really deserved it because he had been like such a like champ for so long and like always shows up and does his like A game. And I knew at that point it was like towards the end of his 17 years, and you realize you are going to have fewer and fewer opportunities. And so to have that come together and to win that class at one of our biggest shows in America, that was really special. And yeah, so that was probably recently the biggest thing. Um, I think looking back in my career, I had a horse, Nougat du Valais. We call him Nunu, and he was the horse that really put me on the map. And I got him when I was 17, which was a while ago. And he, in the span of his career, had a lot of really great moments. One of those was being on the winning Nations Cup team in Dublin, the Aga Khan, which was, I think, a really special moment because like being on the US team is such a dream and a goal for any young American rider, and the show in Dublin is one of the best in the world, and it takes a lot of things to go right to win a Nations Cup. And that was a really memorable day, and a really, you knew it, we jumped a clear round in the second round, which like we needed to do for the win. And so that was a great moment of riding under pressure and having that result. Um, I would say another kind of standout moment in my career, especially as an American, was winning the National Horse Show Grand Prix. That was also with Nunu. And it's like a class with so much history in the US. And so I was very proud to have won at Washington and Kentucky in my career.
Awesome. Yeah. It's always nice to have special moments with special horses like that in
Yeah,
your career. And
yeah, for sure.
um, yeah, and while there are kind of those high moments in the sport, there can also be some low moments, and maybe close to a win, but not quite, or something goes kind of wrong in the round, maybe. And how do you handle some of those moments where something doesn't quite go right and there's some kind of disappointment?
Um, so there are, of course, going to be moments that are frustrating and disappointing. And I would be being dishonest if, to say that I don't also feel that frustration and disappointment. I think what I try to do is realize that the good news is that there's always another horse show, and that I let myself be upset for a day, but then I really try to like snap out of it and uh, move forward and move forward in uh, in a smart way, like kind of basically analyze like what went wrong, why didn't this go the way I wanted, what can I do now to get better, and then not let myself get stuck on it and move forward. And I think that goes along with taking kind of a long-term view of your career and your career with any particular horse, and that it's not going to be defined by any one horse show, and that there's one thing that's great right now in the sport is there's so many big events, and so there's so many opportunities to kind of keep moving forward and always be setting new goals.
Totally. Yeah. It's something, you have to work on, and with working with horses and working through those kind of difficult times and
Yeah.
learning from them often. So, with competing, are you someone that you kind of get nervous when you compete? And if so, how do you handle those nerves?
So yes, of course, I think that everyone's different, but when I get nervous, I think one thing I try to remind myself is that being nervous is a good thing, that it means that you've made it somewhere and that something's important to you. And you're not going to get nervous for some event that doesn't matter or that doesn't matter to you. And it's a reflection both of like how far you've come and how badly you want it, and treat those as like relish those as good things, not as bad things. And I think kind of that shift in mindset can be quite helpful for me. Another thing that I also try to kind of revisit is like finding the joy in what we do, and uh, like going to a big competition and being like, this is why I do this. This is why I come to the barn, at whatever hour every day, and this is why we've dedicated so much of your life to this. Like one of these reasons is because you dream of coming to these big moments, and then like when you're there, you should like try to find a way to enjoy it, and also like when you have come so far with your horse, and the gratitude that comes along with like having a horse in form like that, and to not have that like wasted on you, and staying present in that sense. I think something like maybe a little bit more practical is I do some meditation, which has helped me on like a Headspace app. And like even just for like 5 or 10 minutes a day, I think it can be quite centering. And I also like with that like try to do some deep breathing exercises just to like make sure I'm calm and focused. So those are some things I do. And I try to actually, another thing is I try to stay off social media. So there are some great things like content driven things like Practical Horseman, but I think in general, I try to like stay focused on what I'm doing.
It kind of leads into my next question. If you kind of have a routine that you like to follow for a big competition.
Sure. So I think that the routine, like this is for me, not getting into like what we do with the horses, but I really try to make sure that I'm on my A game as much as I can be, and like in what I can control, because there's so many things that can happen that are unexpected, which you have to just have kind of a, and you have to be okay with. But one thing I think is really important is sleep, and I try to sleep 8 hours a night, which I didn't used to, and I've realized that that is like something I should take seriously, and especially before big competitions, and not just like the night before, like the few days before, just like be really on top of that, because for sure I feel like fitter and healthier and in a better mood, and I owe that to myself and my team and my horses. I think also like really having a good plan the morning of, depends like if you're at a like more of a circuit show or a like more local show where you really know the drill, it's a little different. But if you're in a new place, like really have your plan so you don't have any day of stress. I try to minimize as much stress as I can, and like having my schedule intact, knowing my plan before I go to bed, like exactly what I'm going to be doing the next day, and making sure I have a good dinner the night before.
Yeah, just
And
kind of.
always a cup of coffee in the morning.
Oh,
So
yes, the essentials. Yeah, sometimes some basic things that you might not think about as much, but it just can be so helpful. And there was a previous interview you did with Practical Horseman. I believe it was maybe the when you won in Washington. You kind of had talked about pushing yourself to win and take risks. And can you talk a bit about that kind of making that shift in your mindset?
sure. So I think it comes down to having confidence, and also kind of resetting expectations. And with my horse Brego, whom I talked about, he was kind of classically a little bit of a bigger horse. He had a very big stride. He maybe didn't have like the kind of like frequency, like pony foot speed that you see with that I had with some of my other horses, and you see with some of these horses winning. And so I think for like some time I kind of had accepted like we're just not going to be a fast pair. And then I got to a point where he jumped a lot of great double clear rounds. And I realized, like, together with my coach at Manley, who I've worked with for a long time, that, like, no, like, it was possible. Like, Brago could be really fast. And, like, it was me that was holding him, like, literally and figuratively holding him back. And that I had to be, like, smarter about how I approach jump offs, and use, like, one thing I think about a lot in general, but also in context of this question, is like using your horse's best assets. And like every horse is different, and sometimes certain things might make them both easy and hard. Like having a big stride can be a really good thing, but can also sometimes make things more complicated. But like let them use their best qualities and find out how you can take advantage of those best qualities to be as competitive as possible. And in that case, like Brego had a huge stride and was very brave. And like, how could I, like, maybe I wasn't going to be as fast as some other horse, doing the same strides in the same line, but like, where could I be fast and like, where could I kind of use his strengths? And also with taking risks, you might, if you're going to a jump off and there's only 5 or 6 people, you maybe if you go for a safer double clear, you might be on the podium, but third. And then if you go to win, you might win or you might be sixth. And it's kind of being willing to take that risk and say like, no, I want to win, and I'm not going to like just be like, oh, I'm going to be happy with like XYZ result. So I think that also, of course, depends on like where you are with a horse at a certain time, but something it's like about pushing myself further and like expecting more from myself too, and like believing that I could do it, and like finding ways to train and like push myself to be better.
Awesome. Yeah, it worked out really well in Washington, and
That sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's very redeeming when you realize like, I watched that video and I thought like I wouldn't have been able to do that a few months ago. So
wow.
um,
Yeah, it's exciting to see, like the shift that you had been working on. So kind of thinking about training, how would you describe your training philosophy?
so I would say my training philosophy is that um, I want to be as one with my horses as possible, and I want them to want to do it, and for my horses to be as happy and as healthy as that they can be, and that we go into the ring with them feeling like they can do it, that they want to do it, and that we're on the same page. And so it's much more of a like we are doing it together rather than like me telling them what to do. So that is something that I think comes from like really putting at the center stage like my horses like welfare in terms of like their conditioning and their physical and like kind of mental health, and that they are feeling really good, and putting horses in like the most appropriate classes and divisions for them, and like where can they thrive, not asking them to do more than they can. And that not that also that comes with like proper training and riding at home, so that when they when the horses get to the big events, like they're focused too and they know what they need to do.
Definitely, yeah, it's so important, yeah, to take care of the horses the best we can, and then perform together in the show ring. Do you have a favorite exercise that you like to work on with your horses? And can you describe it a bit if you do have one?
Sure. So I have a few like little things that I will share that may or may not be helpful. So one thing that I love doing is riding outside. So we're lucky to be in North Salem, where we have a farm that has like some open land on it, but also we're connected to a trail system where there's like extensive. There's the North Salem Trail Association, and there's a bunch of riding trails that connect to some open fields with some natural jumps. And I talked about how I had enjoyed doing some like cross country type jumps when we had a break from showing during the pandemic, but in normal times and now, I think it's really important to bring the horses out and like be on like different types of terrain, of course, like within reason, but like grass and the trails, and like walk, trot, canter. And I think that really helps them strengthen their muscles, gets them strong through their top line and in their core, but in a natural, like very happy way. And also that they think a little bit about where they're putting their own feet, I think can be really physically good for them. And even though these horses are so important, that we don't like treat them, but like that they're so too fragile, right? And that I think that that's important, and also that it keeps them like mentally and emotionally like happy. Like see something different. It's not every time that you ride them you go back into the same arena to do like the kind of very disciplined work. It's more that like they can be outside, see something different, go with other horses. So and that riding is also fun for them. I think that's really important. I want my horses to like see me and be happy, and then be happy to like go out together. But of course, like you also, like, everything needs to be in balance, and so we also do quite a bit of work in the ring when we're training. Um, I mentioned before that I've been working with Be It Manly now for 10 years, and he helps me a lot at home. And so, like some exercises, um, that we do a lot of exercises on the flat, and mostly usually just smaller jump exercises, more for kind of like general fitness and rideability, and not so often jumping so big at home to really kind of save the horses and their efforts for the show ring. In flat work, one thing that I like, kind of my personal approach, I like to go forward before I go back, and really make sure my horses are like in front of me, and like pick up like after I've like warmed up, like a nice like gallop, and do a figure eight, and really like get them moving, like let them strength like open their stride and loosen up physically before I ask for too much collection. I think sometimes you see like collect, but it's also like they let them go forward too, and like if they want to buck, or if whatever they want to do, like get it out of their system, and that they're loosened up before you ask too much of them, and that it's really important that they're properly warmed up really before you start asking them things that are maybe more complicated. Um, One simple exercise I do, which sounds very simple, but on the flat, is at canter, either in 2 point or sitting, do 6 strides forward, 6 strides back, 6 strides forward, 6 strides back, and I count in my head. And I do that because it really like lets me know where I am with my rideability. And I don't ask like more than I think the horse can do at that time, but that they're on my leg and then they come back, and that even if I'm not like fully as back as I want, that I get off the mouth again and like get them moving forward. And so that like back and forth really like keeps me focused and knows where I am with them. Um, and then one jumping exercise that I would say, like something I might do like in between shows and like a Monday or Tuesday, is like over a like very big circle, do a few bounces in a row, like on a curve. So either like 4 or 6 bounces, like on the circle, not high, just like cavaletti almost size. And you can basically make sure that your horse has like a good connection. They're connected from the bit through their top line to you, and that you get them kind of even on both sides, a little bit of bend in both ways. You can play around with the distance of the bounce, like all very kind of in moderation, but like if you want them to stretch out a bit or have them a little bit more collected. And I think this is also really good for the rider because it helps like your balance a lot. It gets make sure that I'm not like leaning, you're not leaning on the horse's mouth, and that you're balanced in your core, and that you really have to use this like big circle and get your horse under the right stride beneath you for the exercise. So if you're doing it a little bit longer, you want to make sure your horse is extended and on a big stride, because it's not something you can kind of make up while you're doing the exercise. And that's something that's kind of fun for the horses. It's not complicated, but it can be, I think, a nice training exercise. I try to make sure that I want to leave every time I ride feeling confident and happy, and that's how I want my horse to feel.
Yeah, definitely. And those are, sound like a lot of good exercises that would be fairly easy for, people to work on at home
For
with their
sure.
horses and their
Yeah.
trainers and whatnot.
It's often
But yeah, so beneficial.
deceiving. Sometimes I think the most simple things can be the most productive, and that you don't
Right.
need to, reinvent the wheel.
Totally. Yeah. So you've gone through most of my questions. I just have a few more kind of wrap up type questions. And, why do you think you've been successful as a rider?
Well, thank you. I think that it's a huge credit to the amazing team I have behind me. And that team is both four and two-legged, but some amazing horses that I've been super fortunate to ride, and it's been joint success with them. But also huge support from my parents, who have, um, helped me in the sport, with my horses, but also a lot of like emotional and kind of support that to pursue this. I have a great team behind me at the barn. I've been working with the same groom, Lou Bedun, for now 7 years. She takes care of my top horses, and we have a great relationship. And I know that my horses are impeccably cared for by someone who knows them so well, and that I have such great communication with. And so that makes a really big difference. And like both having like a high, such a great quality of level, but also longevity with the same team. And then I would say that I've, had been very grateful to work with some amazing coaches, and working with Viet for the last 10 years I've learned a tremendous amount from him. So I owe whatever success I've had to the people around me. I think in terms of myself, um, maybe it's my determination and that I pick myself up when things don't go well.
Sure, yeah, because it's always so important to have, a great support system, anything that you do, and especially with horses.
Yeah, in anything in life, it's invaluable. So
You kind of mentioned at the end there, just, sometimes there are some hard moments. And what do you think kind of the hardest part of this sport is for you?
I think one thing that's hard is uh, the career length and the peaking of a horse's career, and that our generally as riders, our career lasts longer than the horse's career, and so you build up um, this. I kind of like think of it as like both a personal and professional relationship, like with your horse, and then you build this up, and then eventually they kind of slow down, and then you have to kind of start up again doing that. And so that I think is hard, especially if you find like this great partnership. Um, it's only going to last for so long. And I think another thing that's hard is that kind of like the age and time at which your horse peaks and you peak with that horse doesn't always line up with like your goals. And so you think about like when there's different like big events and things like that, it's not, you try your hardest to make sure you're peaking at that moment, but often that's out of your control. So I think generally what that is to say is that there's a lot of things that are not in your control in this sport, and that sometimes is difficult for me, and something that I've had to work to kind of accept and always look forward, like look forward, not back.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And kind of look now you said don't look back, but when you have any advice kind of you would give your younger self looking back now, I guess.
I would say that you if I had to say to my younger self that you can have a long career riding, and sometimes things that felt like they were the end of the world at that moment aren't, and also to enjoy the special moments, and enjoy the moments you have with your horse, because you'll look back on those moments fondly.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Because, yeah, time can seem to fly sometimes with, working
Mhm.
with horses and competing and everything. Is there something that people don't know about you that you could share?
Um, so one thing that people might not know about me is I mentioned I loved animals, but I don't just love horses. I have two pet chickens. They're Polish hens. Their names are Hortense and Jocelyn. I'm obsessed with them. Everyone at our barn knows this, and I'm sure it's much to everyone's chagrin that I am so chicken obsessed. But they're wonderful hens. They love people. You can like pick them up. And one eccentricity I would say that I've been indulged in is that the hens ship down with the horses when we go to Florida for the winter. So they spend their winter in Florida and they lay eggs, and I personally think they bring a lot of joy to everyone at the stable. And I um, I brought them up by like hand from chicks like 4 years ago, and so they're my buddies. So that maybe is not something I broadly advertise, but now I am.
Oh,
So that's about something I might not know. And then I guess a more recent thing that I could share is that I became engaged to my longtime boyfriend. Thank
Congratulations.
you. Last month, and it was a total surprise. But he proposed in front of my retired horses and in front of Nunu's stall. And so I said Nunu was our witness. And that was super special. It was like a horse girl's dream. And then we took photos with Nunu and Brego and my other horse who's retired there, Dougie. So that was super special. That was like, uh, that was so I couldn't have imagined anyone I would want to witness my proposal other than my horse. So that was perfect.
So sweet. Yeah, well, congratulations again.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
exciting. Which kind of that leads in quite well to my last question in terms of what's next. What's next on a maybe more personal part of your life, but also with your horses.
So what's next in my personal life is I want to plan a very animal forward wedding. Um, so who knows what species could be walking down the aisle. And then with my riding career, I am looking forward to developing my partnership with Out of the Blue, my mare that I jumped in Aachen. We call her Bridie. I should say Out of the Blue SCF. She was actually bred in America, which is not as common in the at the 5-star level yet in show jumping. She was bred by Spy Coast Farm, which is super cool. She's an American born and bred horse, and she I think is a spectacular mare, and I'm really excited about our future together. And she's shown just so many amazing qualities, so I'm really excited about that. She's 10. And so looking forward to the future with her. I have 2 nice 8-year-olds that we've been bringing up, and I'm excited to see what they do. They are 2 mares, and I think have a lot of talent, and it's fun with young horses. You never know kind of what they might end up doing. Of course, you hope for the best, but I'm a big believer, until they've done it and done it a few times, you don't really know. So and I would say in terms of other horses for the future, my mom and I have done a little bit of breeding together with some of my former jumpers, some of my mares we bred. And so now our, I guess, second generation is reaching kind of 5 and 6 years old, and we have a few foals. And it's a long shot with breeding, but it would be very special if any of those ended up being competitive jumpers. Would be sentimental and very rewarding.
Oh yeah, very cool. It's exciting to think about. Yeah, the second generation of maybe some of your favorite horses from the past, and fingers crossed that they'll develop.
You need all your fingers crossed and toes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but it sounds like a really exciting future for you and your horses and everything. So
Thank you.
Best of luck with all of that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to this week's conversation with Katie Dinan, and a big thank you to the episode sponsor, Purina. Learn more at purinamills.com. You can subscribe to the Practical Horseman podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. While you're there, please rate and review the show. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Kathleen Landwehr, and you've been listening to the Practical Horseman podcast.